This is the DRS train.
Charming little tune. I'm Peter Brook. I'm joined by Nav F1, and you're listening to the DRS Train podcast. So, Singapore. Going into this, a lot of people were thinking this could really be the turning point in the championship with this 4-week break we've got coming up now, and on the basis of how Red Bull performed last year. It ended up proving not to be the case, not so critical in the championship, and also as a race compared to last year, just not so entertaining really either.
Yeah, well, firstly, Red Bull, we will have to assess how good they were, because was it a Max masterclass or was it just Red Bull actually getting their shit together with this new floor that they kind of made up with the 3 previous floors or whatever it is. So we'll have to see if that was just Max really turning it up for this race, because he did have a basically perfect race and weekend actually. But it's good to see that Red Bull will be fighting McLaren, because yeah, a week ago it did seem a bit bleak and we thought that McLaren would just run away with it.
I mean, that being said, McLaren did well. Norris effectively did dominate this race. It was a very comfortable margin, even with Max. If you look at Checo's performance, I would say out driving the car. But yeah, let's start with McLaren. Really, really dominant performance again from Lando, reminiscent of Zandvoort. I think he even broke his own record for this year for the largest winning margin. I mean, he was gaining almost a second a lap on him by the end of the race. He effectively had an entire pit stop on Max. Oscar, because qualifying put everyone out of sequence with Sainz crashing and the red flag, so he was a bit behind, but he got ahead of the Red Bulls, the Mercedes, got himself into third. Even so, it's still not enough if we think that Lando needs to take the title, because in this position, he can take the title if he wins every remaining race with fastest lap, and Max is second in them. But I think we established that's probably not going to happen. So it's just, we'll have to see. But it's clearly the best car at the moment.
The main manner in which that could just not happen would be Leclerc and Ferrari, because they have really been performing in the last few races, and they just were. They did deliver a shit of a performance on Saturday. We will get to that later. But yeah, back on McLaren, they were really impressive. I mean, Lando, for the first 5 laps, Max was keeping up with him, a second and a half behind. He seemed to just be managing his pace. And then, yeah, by lap 20, I think it was, or 15, there was a 12 or 13 second gap. And that was really, really scary. Like, that's not something I really expected. Even with us knowing that Red Bull would not be as fast this weekend, I did not expect it to be this big of a gap. So yeah, Lando, there's not much to say on his pace. However, his mistakes were there again. So you cannot, again, we've spoken about this a lot, about what makes you a champion and what our champions drives. Sky called it a champion's drive. Now, if a champion's drive is hitting the wall, what was it, twice or thrice?
Twice,
for no
yeah.
reason. Yeah, that's not how you define a champion's drive, especially when he's lapping a driver. You don't lose focus when lapping a driver. If you're going to be a champion, lapping a driver should be as common for you as if you were performing in WEC or something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it shows that he was probably pushing when he didn't need to, and I assume he must have been to be creating the gaps he was. But that kind of performance, we've seen that numerous times from drivers like Hamilton or Vettel. But the thing is, they never made mistakes like that. They always just controlled it from the front. And he, yeah, twice. I mean, the first time especially, he was so close to being in the wall, which would have been the end of the championship had that happened, because it means that the gap of it's currently 52 points is the gap now from him to Max. That would have gone up to 84 points if Max had won with Lando out, and that's title's finished at that point. The second one, he actually hit the wall in the same way that George did on the last lap last year at the same corner. That was a very slight knock. It is just those little things, and you could see as well that even like after qualifying when he got pole, he just looked kind of miserable because I think he knew that's not like because Max was second as well. I think he just knew this is not going to work, and then even after the race, he didn't seem particularly enthused either because again Max was second, so yeah, you've beaten him, but the gap is not enough to close it up really.
Yeah, and the other thing is, on French commentary at least, they really put it well. Lando needs Oscar to be faster, but not too fast. And that's going to be really, really hard to manage with McLaren because, yeah, you make Oscar 2 tenths faster. That might mean Oscar gets pole position and then you have an issue on your hands. But you keep Oscar on his current pace, and I think Max could be in the Singapore situation where he just edges him. We need to mention that Oscar's Q2 lap, I think, was enough for P2. I think that was the one, or maybe the gap to Lando would have meant he gets P2. Well, whatever it is, Oscar had pace to qualify on the front row, and he didn't. And that would have changed a lot. So basically, McLaren need to hope they can get 1-2s all the way to get that title. And Oscar is going to have to be Lando's biggest piece of help in this fight, but at the same time, he's gonna have to make sure that he makes no mistake in quali or in the race, because if Oscar goes in front, then again it's gonna be a really, really awkward situation where they have said they're gonna prioritize Landon from now on, but you can just smell it's gonna be a bit tricky to deal with.
Yeah, it's just these little mistakes that are making the difference from both of them. I mean, Oscar, he at least has the excuse that this is only his second season, and yesterday that was his 40th race, which is not very much. Whereas Lando is on season 6, he's got over 100 races under his belt. He should have really ironed these kind of problems out now, because again, these kind of mistakes, we almost never see these from Max, even this year when he's been on the back foot for a large part of the year. The only races that have been really stinkers on his end from a driving perspective have been Austria and Hungary. Otherwise, he's done everything he can, more or less, and that's why he's hanging on and is probably going to take fourth title. It will be, won't it?
And the other thing is on Lando's pace as well. I can sense a lot of fear, but also a lot of a will to prove himself. That is not exactly the composure you want from someone in a championship fight. So again, 30-second lead yesterday, well done, but he really didn't need to do that. And as you said, it was obvious he was pushing. So why do you push in that situation when you need to make a statement, to quote that viral post from the official F1 account a few races ago? So it's not that great to witness. I mean, he obviously feels like he needs to prove himself. So there is some kind of insecurity I can sense there. He didn't have to build a 30-second gap. And it could have been a natural 30-second gap, as you say. Like, it could have been just a gap that is made out of pure pace, but it wasn't. The engineer kept having to tell Lando, slow down, it's fine, slow down. That's a sense of someone who's not very confident in his ability just yet. And just to Lando fans out there, he did win by 25 seconds. We're not discrediting that, but there are so many small mistakes that could be really fatal. I mean, if he ends up in the wall, that's one of the biggest jokes in Formula One title fight history.
Yeah, I mean, we have that animation that they sometimes use, which looks like it came out of Burnout, where it's like super close to the wall when they nearly hit it. And someone just edited that to be super close to losing the championship. Because that's what it should have been, really.
So,
yeah.
Exactly. So Lando, he needs um, to smooth. He needs to polish these mistakes out. And Oscar Oscar is a very interesting driver because you can just tell he's going to be a huge threat next year.
Hmm.
But you can also still tell he's on his second year, which a lot of people can forget because we've been hearing about Oscar for so long. Just Formula One fans, they will have heard of him since 2022, probably 21 when he won the title, and then big enthusiasts will know of Piastri since 2020. So it seems like he's been around for a long time, but it's only his second season. And there is a driver brewing there, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. I think next year, it's probably going to be a title fight between those two because Red Bull, Newey will have gone, but then I suppose his contract ends in March, so he's probably still going to be involved in the design of their car as their parting gift, I guess, before he disappears to Aston Martin. But Red Bull is a sinking ship either way. So for me at the moment, it's hard to say that they will be involved in a proper title fight next year, even with Max's Herculean efforts. But yeah, if we look at Red Bull themselves, this what was a damage limitation weekend. Well, at least it was for Max because last year was a very strange race, and I kind of, as entertaining as that race was, I kind of wish it hadn't happened because I would love to see one team do it and just win every race in a season, and they got so close to it. Because McLaren in '88, they had the pace to do it in every race. It's just because Senna got taken out by a backmarker in Monza that they did, and that was the only reason they didn't do it. Whereas Red Bull, without there was no reliability problem, so they legitimately could have done it, and then just suddenly they
Do you
have.
remember which backmarker it was?
Sorry,
Do you remember which backmarker it was?
Jean-Louis Schlesser. He was a one-off appearance with Williams because Mansell had something. I think it was pneumonia or some weird disease or something. He got bitten by something and he was off for a race. So they brought him in, who I think he'd done a couple of races about 6 years earlier. He tried to qualify with a different team. His uncle was Joe Schlesser.
Yeah.
Who was famously burned alive for the French Grand Prix in 1968 in that magnesium car. But yeah, he was an endurance racer. Jean-Louis Schlesser did Le Mans. I think he won it maybe at least once. He took him out. But otherwise, they would.
Jean-Louis Schlesser is the guy who became a legend in Dakar, I think. He has won it like 3 or 4 times, I believe.
Potentially, I mostly know him.
He made his own car. There's a blue Schlesser car thingy that he did. I'm just checking it now. This is completely off topic. Yeah, Jean-Louis Schlesser, he's known for what you said, and then
because he drove I'm pretty certain he was a Mercedes factory driver in the World Sports Car Championship, or for Sauber. He drove like the Sauber C9 in that one.
He finished second at Le Mans in 1991.
Okay. Yes, yeah, but yeah, just one-off appearance takes out Senna right near the end of the race. Because even then they had.
He appeared once before, you were right, at the 1983 French Grand Prix in a Ram automotive team.
Yep, yeah. But
there you go.
But McLaren, they even had, that was in an era where dominant teams still had breakdowns, which they did have, and they had races like Monaco, which I almost mentioned before, because Senna in that race was like 2 seconds a lap faster than Prost, and then he crashed from the lead and rage quit and stormed off to his apartment. And because the crash wasn't caught on camera, nobody saw it. And that's so easily what could have happened yesterday with Lando, but obviously didn't. But yeah, they could have won every race without Singapore. And I was thinking, okay, this season has been even weaker, so this is going to be a horrific race for them. But then Max still just about pulled out P2. It might have been P3. I mean, because some of the lap times were faster in Q2 because the track evolution, but also the red flag for Ferrari really messed things up. Checo, well, yeah, we had the one track he's good at, Baku. He crashes at the end, and now we're back to our regular scheduled program and gets himself knocked out in Q2 and is 13th. So now that's just made an even bigger dent in the gap with them and McLaren in the constructors' title. But Max, even though I think he knew he couldn't beat him, but he seemed pretty relaxed either way because I think he knows that the ball is still in his court in this championship.
Well, I think the most interesting part about Max's weekend the most interesting part about Max's weekend was not really the racing, which was really good, but that entire community service shenanigans, which was really, really entertaining. So I think I think everyone should be on his side on this one. There's no real reason to be against that. But what the hell is MBS and his team doing? Why can you not swear? You cannot swear in the car. You cannot swear in the interviews. You're fining the drivers for the dumbest reasons. It was a bit of a masquerade what Max did, but it was really worth it, and I think just deserved.
I mean, I understand not swearing when you're on a live broadcast, but the radio messages are not broadcast live, and neither is the press conference. Like he says to them, don't swear in the car, and it's like, well, no, just don't broadcast it. And even when you do, it's censored, so that's not you're choosing to broadcast it. And I get that maybe he's thinking for the sake of the F1 kids broadcast, even though that wasn't for this race, because in that it does, even if it's censored, it doesn't look so good. But yeah, just don't broadcast it, even though we can't hear what they're saying anyway because it's censored. And also the drivers, like they don't exist purely for their media duties and the fans and all of that. There is their own priorities in terms of performance and everything else. So they're not always thinking, oh, I need to think about how I'm presenting myself to the public. It's like, no, I'm driving this car and I need to just get the job done, really.
Yeah, so 2023 Belgian Grand Prix, Alonso hits Hamilton. When Hamilton's on the outside, Hamilton goes flying, and Alonso delivers his famous, he can only fight from first or whatever. He can only drive from first.
22.
22, yes.
Yeah.
I assume it was an Aston Martin, but I forgot somehow he was starting P3 in an Alpine. Yeah, that was an instance where Alonso was like, I was communicating with my team that I got hit by this idiot, whatever, and I was just venting my frustration. I wasn't saying this to the fans. I wasn't making a statement about what I think about Lewis as a driver, because obviously he's a legend or whatever. This is me communicating with Ross, I don't know what, who's his engineer. And that's a real issue, because if drivers cannot feel comfortable communicating with their engineers for the sport, then what are we doing? They are not making those statements for the camera or for the fans, because they don't even know what gets aired. As you say, they don't know what's going to be on the TV feed. So none of those statements are made with the intention to go viral. When George Russell is saying crikey, it's not to go on the TV feed. It's just, that's him. So
just being British, yeah.
Exactly. So it's so stupid. One of the best contexts I read about this is when you're driving, when a normal person is driving at 20 kph on the road, and someone just swerves in front of them, they will swear the entire family of that person, even though it was a 20 kph swerve and nothing could have happened. This is a situation in a sport where you might have a dangerous situation at 300 kph plus, by the way. It's human to have a reaction, especially when there might be damage or there might be consequences for your race or even career in some instances. So let them swear. And also, by the way, the swear words they're using, it's the F word, or yeah, it's 80% of the time it's the F word,
It's
or
quite
maybe
light on the language, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's the F word, which every single kid. That's the other thing. Yes, you shouldn't teach swear words to kids, but every single person will encounter the F word in their life for sure. At least at the latest, the age of 12, I think. So yeah, they're using the F word and they're bleeping it, which everyone knows they're doing. Maybe it's that calling someone a moron or something. It's not really, really, really bad words. The retard thing that was error to find Tsunoda for. Again, Yuki had no idea, because it's not a thing that some people, some countries even know about. They just think it's a bad word. But they're not insulting the families of the drivers. They're just using the F word.
Yeah, they're just getting annoyed because, again, like you said, they don't know what gets broadcast, because when you're actually in the car, they know surprisingly little of what's going on around them, because they can't hear the commentary, of course, and they're only really aware of the car immediately in front and the car immediately behind. Other than that, they haven't got a clue what else is going on. And all
Or
of
if you're
that.
Max, sometimes, then you can tell who's spitting around his who's spitting, because he can hear a car pitting on GP's.
Oh
Like,
yeah, of course they can hear it through that. Or if you're Alonso, you just look at the big screens around the track and you can see
exactly.
what's
You just
going on
actually watch
quickly.
TV like all of us.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
how they have
So
time. I mean, it amazes me how they have time to do it in the same way that the boards that come out of the pit wall, how you have time to read that, because they've been using those for decades, telling you
yeah.
your gap and everything when they're going that
Yeah,
fast.
I never got that. I never got that. There's a board where it's written your name and plus 0.5, and you're
But
just
you would have to look at it like, okay, which one's mine, and then oh yeah, that one, like, and then realize that's it's too fast. Maybe in the olden days when the cars were a bit slower, it might have been easier, but I mean, we have these helmet cams now, which are really good, but obviously the human eye is better at correcting for bouncing and bumps than the cameras are because it looks impossible to drive on those. But for them, it is I'm sure, a smoother experience than just with that
well,
camera.
you did your Formula Renault 3.5 experience or Formula Renault 2 whatever experience. Did you feel like you could have read a board?
Maybe. I mean, that car was not very fast. I mean, I think I maybe maxed at about 100 miles an hour on it, but I could see everything fine. I mean, the only thing I had to look out for was when they waved the flag to tell me this is your last lap, so then come in the pit lane in the next one. Yeah, but that was much slower. But still, you can. I think your brain can adjust for it in a way that a camera can't.
Yeah. But
So
yeah,
yeah.
bottom line is I have no idea why they're being so restrictive on swear words. They are not the worst words in the world. They're most often F words. And they're just endangering the sport because at the end of the day, it's about communication with your engineers, it's about communication with your team, and it's about human reactions to like shout or panic when a car swerves in front of you or hits you or there's a crash or your tire bursts. You're not exactly going to be like, oh no, someone swerved. Go
Yeah.
tell Charlie, or obviously not Charlie anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, because he's been sentenced to community service or something. There was before we were
Do you know what that
recording.
entails? Do
I
you know
don't know
what
because
community service entails? Because I'm thinking, what is he gonna like pick up the trash cans?
yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think they said F1 related, but because community service for like a normal prison sentence is usually things like those people, those guys wearing the inmates overalls by the side of the road picking up trash cans and stuff like that by the highway, or it's like delivering ready meals to pensioners or something like that. It's just but it said within an F1 context. So I don't know because there is someone else that recently got community service. It wasn't Tsunoda because he got fined. There was, I'm sure, another driver got that for doing something. Maybe it wasn't swearing. I get the feeling it was Vettel for contravening the rules around T-shirts and other stuff, which he tended to do. Because Yuri Vips had to go on like a racial awareness course after his little episode on Twitch.
I feel like it was Vettel because on Reddit I saw the three horsemen of something, and it was Max, it was Lewis wearing jewels just after they banned jewelry, and then there was Vettel wearing a T-shirt just after something. So I think it was Vettel. Just
I think it
based
was
on the quote.
maybe it was the one about stopping the tar sands in Canada, because that one he got in trouble with some Canadian politicians had a go at him for that one. Or it was the Same Love T-shirt in Hungary, one of those. But yeah, he had to do community service for breaking. Basically, it's all these weird rules about etiquette that just make no sense. There was somebody in, I think, Formula 3 or Freca recently that the team got fined because the wheels were left in the wrong position by the side of the car before the race was meant to start. And it's like, that's just so, it's like, oh, we're having a go at you because you put the fork on the wrong side of the plate or whatever. Like, it's like, why does that matter? And the language thing, the language thing again is like just censor it because I understand that you want kids to be watching F1, but that's why you censor this stuff. And most of the time, the drivers are sensible enough to not swear on live television.
Exactly. So I do not get it. Press conference, no one watches it. Everyone reads it. If the only people who watch it are the ones who like post it online or make compilations of funny moments. No one watches it. So, do you know what Max actually said during the press conference? Did he say the F word?
I think he just said the F word once, and that was it. I mean, I get that they don't often swear actually in press conferences. That's less common, but still, it's like it's not. Why is that you're making such an issue? Because I mean, Max after this. There was the whole thing after qualifying where he just said no comment to every question, and that. But
that was great.
Yeah, but also because he's hinted at like, he's hinted at retirement because of this. And that's happened several times in the past couple of years. He's hinted at not wanting to. I mean, he's already said he's not going to be here in 5 years' time. He'll be done. Which, at the end of the day, that's 14 years is for him, considering is relatively short. It means he'd be retiring at 32, I suppose, if he goes until the end of 2029. He could easily go for another 10 years if he wanted. On top of that, he could be here for 25 years effectively. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case.
It depends if he wants to break Lewis's records.
I don't know how many records he's really targeting is the thing. He's never spoken so much about that because, like, Vettel wanted...
Not interested.
Yeah, because I mean, Schumacher, he wanted to break Fangio's record, which is why title number 6 mattered more than number 7. Lewis has always been about beating Michael. Vettel wanted to match Michael. Rosberg only needed the 1, and that was good enough for him. Yeah.
Alonso wants 10, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, just 3 is a miracle, or even just 1 more win will have to do for him because he's living on borrowed time. But Max, he likes to hint at this. He's said before, because the very hectic schedule when they've got more than 20 races, traveling a lot. And I get that for him, it feels a bit like Lance Stroll, and that it's obvious to a lot of people that Lance really doesn't really want to do this, and he's just his dad living vicariously through him, and that exists with Max and Jos as well. Max is more passionate, but also just more talented. But he's been groomed and pushed for this his entire life since he was 3-4 years old. You would get tired of it eventually.
It's just the Formula One bit of it. I think he's not super enthused about. Maybe they're like kind of Montoya when he loves racing a bit like Montoya, but he cannot be fussed with too much of what's going on around. He does enjoy it a bit more, but he's never had to properly deal with the politics himself because he's always been the main guy. So he was promoted to Red Bull and he's just been chilling there. And I think for the first time he's kind of the main piece of politics. Whereas Montoya, he was part of the political shenanigans from day one of joining Williams. So Max will stay in racing for sure, and the sim racing, endurance racing, he is interested in a lot of things. But Formula One, I cannot see him having more than like 4 or 5 years.
Formula One, it's too regimented in every possible way. That's the thing. Whereas you can see this with Montoya. There was that conflict because he came from IndyCar, and like IndyCar, Formula E, WEC, NASCAR. These things are a bit more off the cuff and a bit like they're not so strict on everything, and the racing is a bit kind of crazier and that. And it is just Formula One.
When Buemi is swearing in the drivers' cool down room version of Formula E, or when they're just shouting at each other, they promote that because they need that for people to actually tune in.
Well, they need they need anyone to watch it because now that it's behind a paywall, no one watches Formula E. When it used to be easy to watch because it was free on Channel 4, unlike Formula One. So
they basically encourage swearing because at least people tune in. So, we'll see what happens there. But Red Bull, better performance this weekend. Let's see if it lasts. I would really prefer to see Max winning his 4th. And win his 4th, he will have to count on his good friend Charles. So moving on to Ferrari, they had a weird performance this weekend. I think people expected much more. And then in Q3, they just dropped a disaster class. Carlos Sainz. Firstly, what was that? How do you spin out before starting your lap? Because he said it was cold tires, but if it was his out lap, I mean, there was this issue of tire warm up in Singapore, but presumably during your out lap, you must have been warming up your tires. So how cold were they as you're about to start your...
Also, how was tyre wear such an issue when it was oppressively hot the whole weekend? I mean, they were saying that the conditions in the race were similar to Qatar last year, and we had drivers collapsing afterwards and really struggling in that. I get that maybe it's harder there because one of the reasons that the races are so long here is because it's actually a very low speed circuit, because it's long straights with all the corners are really, really slow, and that probably doesn't work on the tyres, and that maybe was part of the reason that last year Red Bull suffered so much here. But you go obviously that suddenly you give it full beans because you have to slingshot out of that last corner. But just crashes before it even started, and a few drivers were struggling because last year Stroll had a big shunt at that corner, but that was on the exit of it. Max messed up in Q2, his first lap in Q2, he messed that up, and that got
But
deleted.
also, Stroll got a crash because he was pushing. That's why I'm a
Yeah.
bit confused.
Yeah, so I don't know I don't know what that was, but it did mean that it messed it put almost everyone out of position in the final qualifying because it messed things up because it meant he was 10th and then everyone's tyres weren't where they needed them to be, and then Leclerc got his own lap deleted. Although I think Leclerc, that lap would have only been good enough for P7
It was
anyway.
P8. Yeah,
It was a
P7, P8, yeah.
yeah. But in the race, those two,
I will say my first reaction when that happened, Haas, Hülkenberg, why didn't you cause a voluntary red flag? Because he would have started second or third. He had every reason in the world to just park it somewhere on the back straight, and he didn't. And that would have been such a Haas strategy to do.
There is a new rule, isn't there, that if you do that, you get sent to the back of the grid, or maybe that's only at Monaco. Or I think they're using that in the Formula Series because Formula 3, good luck finding a single quali session where one of the people in the bottom 10 that shouldn't even be there crashes at the end and fucks everyone's pole laps up. But they,
Have they already started doing it in F1? I know it was a.
I think that they want to introduce it, or they would decide maybe we should bring this in after the last few Monacos 21 and 22.
Yeah,
both times we've seen drivers pulling that.
They have introduced it. So yeah, I was just thinking, Haas, you have nothing to lose by just telling Hülkenberg to bin it and start front row tomorrow. But they didn't, and that was
also he would have had to have crashed in a very careful and considerate manner to not destroy the gearbox or the engine, because then you get because then you would have had to start from the pit lane, so that wouldn't have worked. But
Leclerc had a decent race, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, in the race itself, the pace was there. I mean, it took both of them forever to get past anyone. I mean, Sainz pitted extremely early, so I will say that even though almost everyone did a one stop, and we were before the race started, it's going to be a one stop race. There was a variety in that some people pitted stupidly early, and then some people ran it really, really long. I mean, there were some drivers that went nearly the halfway mark on the mediums. So these tires, if you and they weren't driving oppressively slow, because we saw Singapore 2019 when Leclerc was leading and he was making everyone run 15 seconds off the pace, and then he gets undercut or overcut by Vettel. But this time, the tires, if you want to, and we saw this again last week in Azerbaijan, and then George did this in Spa, you can really make them last if you want to at the moment. Because Sainz ended up on, by the end of it, him and his lap, I think his hard tires were 47 laps old by the end of the race, or something, which is insane.
The undercut was powerful, but once the tires dropped off, you couldn't do anything. So it was about the first few laps where you had to attack, but also not too much, and make positions, and then just sit there. And that's how, I guess, Leclerc ended up, what was it, 3 positions in front of Sainz? Did Leclerc finish before?
Fifth and seventh. He was 34 seconds in front of Sainz at the end.
Yeah, which is kind of mad when they were kind of together at the start. Leclerc was behind. Yeah, they went on alternate strategies. So maybe one strategy worked better, but
they spent the first stint stuck behind Hülkenberg and Alonso, because Charles was getting really annoyed about that, because he stayed out, so he was behind them for ages, whereas Sainz pitted early, but then he had to get through traffic after pitting. So that damaged the pace. It's just that even if they qualified ahead of the Haas, if they were P5 and P6 or something, they would have been up there with Mercedes and McLaren, and they would have been involved in some way because they had the pace for it. But it's the little things that make the difference in this title fight.
Exactly. So this also, quite importantly, was kind of ruled out Leclerc definitely from the fight, because there were some talks that he was kind of still in, but now it's over, so.
I have something on this. So in terms of the average, the minimum average points that each driver needs to close up to max in these last 6 races if they want to beat him at the end. So Lando 8.67, Charles is 14.33, and then Oscar is 15.67. So Lando, even first with fastest lap it's only enough because of the sprint races if he wins all of those 2. But Charles and Oscar, they would need to win every race with Max fourth or lower to do it, which is just not going to happen. Without a retirement from Max, it's going to be really difficult. But if Max retires from the next race and Lando wins it, then suddenly the points gain he needs halves. It's about 4 points per race at that point, and that at that point he genuinely could take it. But at the moment, it's really not going to be easy.
Yeah, if Max crushes, it has to be with Lando, otherwise it's over.
Yeah, and I think before the race we were wondering maybe this could happen because we've seen there has been some stuff happening at Singapore, and I mean Lando was a bit close with Max, even was a little bit close with Lewis at the start, but and as I said at the beginning I thought this race really could be the turning point in the championship, and then Max qualified second and finished second, and it's ended up being fairly inconsequential in that regard, and also just not very entertaining. Because again, another point, first ever Singapore Grand Prix without a safety car. Admittedly, maybe because they removed the tunnel section, which was the cause of almost every safety car before. But yeah, that hasn't made much difference to the circuit in terms of improving it.
They will put it back after 2 years. They're just repairing it or something.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a permanent change from what I've heard, but still, it's insane that we've done Baku and Singapore back to back. There hasn't been a single safety car.
Yeah,
this is where, I mean, we've talked about this before. That's the issue with everyone saying, oh, every driver has to be their own merit. Yeah, great, they are their own merit, but then you don't have crashes. You need your Sargents, you need your Latifis. Because when you have a grid with everyone being competent, which has literally never happened in the history of Formula One, then you don't get crashes and you get careful drivers. And next year, Magnussen's going to be out. He was one of the last chances. People won't have to act surprised when nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, also make the cars a bit harder to drive because they're just obviously on rails, and they moan about the tires not working. It's like, yeah, but generally speaking, people don't make mistakes because the cars have become just so autonomous, and you can control everything on the steering wheel and change all the settings you need, and it does all of this stuff. And they used to be like 15, 20 years ago, they used to be really raggedy and on the edge, and yeah, you would see people crashing on their own, and people crashing on their own just doesn't happen in races anymore. Like people just don't do that.
The people who did have been kicked out.
Yeah.
That's also the thing. So that's where you're like, it's great that the sport is kind of becoming more on merit when you think about who's on the grid, but yeah, that's not great in terms of entertainment. Well, talking about entertainment, there was one driver who was really fuming at the end of his race, and that makes us move to Mercedes, who decided that Lewis just could go get fucked, really. Starting him on softs in Singapore for absolutely no reason. Toto's probably, I don't know if he was asked about it, but Toto would probably say, yeah, we were trying to go for the win. No, there was no chance you were going to get the win. So doing soft hards is criminal.
I think
all you're doing.
Yeah. I think their logic there was because they thought, okay, even though they were used softs, so they would, and that is that you would get the second from Max at the start and try and build something out from that. He didn't, so he basically gained nothing, and it just meant he had to pit much earlier because for a lot of the first stint, he was basically holding George up because he was having to manage the tyres more. And yeah, to do that on a one stop, and then he did 45 laps on hards, so he had no pace at the end. Was it when he was passing Ocon or Stroll when he almost went into the wall as well? There was somebody he was trying to get through after pitting and nearly went into the wall.
Was it Tsunoda?
Actually, yes, it was Tsunoda.
Yes.
So yeah, this just again not another good strategy, and it's like maybe I'm assuming that Lewis must have signed off on this, but this is another thing about drivers who are quite passive on strategy, and Lewis is definitely one of those, along with Charles. That he tends to just principally listen to the team and say, okay, we'll do this. That's fine. Again, Lando does that. Max takes it more into control himself about the tyres he wants. Oscar expresses concerns more. Vettel would do his own strategies on the fly and that of his teammates because Ferrari couldn't do it themselves. Yeah, so it's I don't know what, because the soft tyres almost never work in races anymore. There are very few races where they actually hold up properly. And they're only good for stealing fastest laps and that sort of thing. but it meant that because in practice both of them were complaining about a complete lack of grip and they couldn't handle the car, and then in qualifying they get third and fourth, so they pulled something out,
That
and then
always happens with them, and I don't get it at all because they always struggle in Q1 and Q2, especially Q1. In Q1, you will often see a Merc like P12 or P14, and then every time they get into Q3, it's top six, and I don't really know what's going on here. And to add on what you said on Lewis, there's no way he got told, yeah, you're doing soft hards, and he thought, yeah, sure. Yeah, Lewis, I'm not too sure why he even agreed on that strategy because for sure he knew that the strategy would get used. So he wasn't happy with the handling at all week, and he complained a lot. After the race, he said that it's starting to be clear. He's been implying that Merck are actively giving him the bad strategies. So it's a bit awkward at the moment, I guess, in the team to not be giving the best strategies to your 7-time world champion. But it also kind of makes sense. So yeah, Merck, not much to say on them, just that they will again be thinking that they're not where they want to be.
yeah, it's just that if people complain that Lewis is getting bad strategies or whatever, and it's like, well, I don't think he's just a slave to them. I think he is allowed to have input, and he probably does have input in these strategies, unless I'm meant to assume that after 17 years he still doesn't know how to think up his own strategies or what he thinks might work. Because at the end of the day, the drivers should get the final say in this because they're the ones driving the cars. They're the ones, they know how everything actually feels in terms of the tires, rather than just looking at data and telemetry and screens, and that's really what matters more. But Mercedes, it seems like a lot of the time they have a qualifying car, it seems to do better on low fuel and softs, and then in the race it just doesn't work as well. And their pace
Well,
is...
an interesting thing I just saw is that apparently both cars were overheating quite a lot, and I don't know if you saw, but in the post-race drivers interview that gets posted, the drivers weren't there. Russell and Hamilton weren't there, and Toto said that both drivers were experiencing a mild heat stroke and were excused of media duties. That's how bad it was because the Mercs were overheating. It looked, you know how you said there was no safety car? A journalist did imply that was a big issue for the drivers because usually the safety cars in Singapore is something that drivers take for granted to like breathe a bit, to have just relax. And 62 laps is it 60 to 70 laps?
Yeah, 62 laps. Yeah.
Okay, 62. Great. 62 laps without any break in that weather is not going to be fun at all.
No. I mean, and that speaks to it being a car issue because the drivers were struggling, but not in the way that they were collapsing after the race, like in Qatar. So, yeah, Mercedes in general have had problems with overheating in the past for years now. Usually not enough to still affect them winning races, but now when they don't have the fastest car, it is more of an issue. So that's the first 4 teams. Who would have been next? It would have been...
Well,
Alonso.
I think we should skip Alonso and just... no, we will go on Alonso, but first talk about the main thing, the main news after the race, which maybe should have been our first topic, actually. But Ricardo, what the hell's going on there? Is he out? Is he not out? Have the fans decided to retire him after the race? What is going on?
Yeah, it kind of feels like he's being buried alive a bit because to get voted driver of the day, like he almost has to retire now just to make that vote look legitimate. Because you either get voted driver of the day because you were the best driver, because you're the fittest driver, or because it's your last race and everyone wants to be nice. And so for Ricardo, he's neither of the first two, so it's going to be the last one. I think the main selling point was the interview because he wasn't like he wasn't being like, oh, I'll see you in Kota and we'll just see how things go and I'm confident of this, and all the stuff that he was saying about with McLaren just before they sacked him to get Piastri in. It's like he's either been told it's Liam or he knows his chances are not good. Because Helmut, before the weekend, he said we'll make an announcement after Singapore about what's going on. And initially it looked like maybe it was just to say that Lawson will be there in 2025. But it might be that, he takes over for these final 6 races, which is warranted because as well as Ricciardo just generally underperforming, having him in that seat goes against the ethos of that team because that's the team he started. If you ignore HRT, the team he started with is meant to be for juniors. It's not meant to be for him. And also, he was only doing it to take Perez's seat, but then Perez might still be staying. So why have him there when they've got this whole queue of juniors trying to get in?
The thing with this fastest lap, I just saw it as an obvious message from the Death Star to Ricardo to get the fastest lap, take it off Lando.
Execute Order 66 kind of thing.
Exactly. 80% of the F1 community, maybe they're right, but I didn't see it as such. They saw it as, this is his retirement lap. This is his final firework exit. And also the fact he got driver of the day. I was really confused. But the thing is, I didn't even think about him getting driver of the day. So it's like, I don't know if I missed a big talk on Twitter. Like maybe the Twitter gang really got on it because I didn't see anything about it on Reddit or like Facebook or.
I knew it was
Discord.
happening because in the final few races he was leading in the poll and they mentioned that. But this was a race where until those final 10 laps when they just pitted him 2 more times, he was just invisible. Because in Azerbaijan he was beyond invisible, like even more invisible than Bottas. And this time, it was. I mean, he did also basically admit in the interview, well, that's an early Christmas present if Max wins the title by 1 point. Is that this? And that's where there has been some controversy. I think McLaren have brought this up that they want this investigated about effectively, in their eyes, that's Red Bull giving team orders to RB, which shouldn't be allowed. It's like they've been doing this for years. It's that's the B team. That's how they've been working for years now.
Well, firstly, but McLaren weren't interested in that. But secondly, that's what's going to happen. The weird thing for me is the F1 page again posting farewell Singapore with 5 pics of Ricardo hugging people, which is as official as it gets. But we haven't had anything official. But that's when I really got weirded out. So all of it, I was like willing to pass it.
I mean, at this point, I almost ignore the main because the F1 account it's basically turned into a fan account at this point. It's like it's so I kind of ignore them. It's not. It needs to be a bit more serious. I think with some of the content they post, like the whole the fake voiceover of the Charles dog as well.
I was going to say exactly that.
It's like this is not TikTok. Can we not like just
That was abysmal because it's. I feel like it's basically the TikTok admin has been given the reins of the Instagram page because on TikTok, you get a lot of attention as a big corporation to post really unexpected stuff, but on Instagram it's not the same audience. So they posted this dog thing, and everyone in the comments were like, "What the hell is this?" You had comments with 15,000 likes being like, "This isn't normal. Why are you posting something on Leclerc's dog? We don't follow you for this. We follow you for news and interviews and results and rumors." So that farewell Singapore with 5 pics of Ricardo, that was really weird because you are the main channel and nothing has been announced. So not too sure what's going on there. Tsunoda, he qualified really well, and that didn't help. Went to Q3 when Ricardo was eliminated in Q1, but then he had literally the worst start on the grid. I just looked at the times. He took 3.7 seconds to go from 0 to 100 when the best drivers took 3 seconds. So that's 7 more tenths to get to 100. Completely botched his start, and then it was over.
Yeah, I mean, Tsunoda, he did a second stint on softs, which was an interesting choice. I mean, to be fair, he made it on them. It just because he pitted, I think, lap 33, and then he did 20. He did almost 30 laps on soft tires. And I mean, fair dues to that, even though it meant he finished the race in 12th when he qualified. What was he? He was in Q3, wasn't he?
Yeah, 8th.
P8, so P8 to P13. So yeah, P12, so not brilliant on his end. But I'll give him kudos that he managed to sustain the soft tires for 27 laps, because the only other person, I mean, Lewis started on softs and he ran for 15 laps or whatever it was. Gasly, I think he tried softs near the end without trying to steal fastest lap. But it was just, it wasn't a brilliant day for RB. I mean, they're up and down all over the place, and it's kind of hard to pin them where they really stand. But there are still a lot of operational errors going on with them.
Yeah, Tsunoda, he was in the fight for P10 in the standings, which is kind of the most entertaining fight you really have in terms of the midfield at the moment. Alonso's got P9 secured, but P10 was between Stroll, Hülkenberg, and Tsunoda. And yeah, Tsunoda has kind of fallen back a little bit, but that can get us to move to Haas, actually, because Haas and Hülkenberg, they delivered this weekend. Hülkenberg has moved up to 10th in the standings, which is quite impressive in a Haas. We cannot take it for granted. The last time they had a driver in 10th in the standings have they had the driver in 10th in the standings?
Oh, they have. No, 2018.
Yeah, 2018, yeah.
Yeah, Grosjean and Magnussen were like 9th, 10th, something like that.
Yeah, so it has been 6 years. So that's good for them. They are progressing. Hülkenberg was really impressive in quali, out qualifying Alonso as well. Which, I guess is kind of normal, but also, just qualifying 6th is insane. So Hülkenberg, good race for him. Redemption from Baku, because Baku is another race where he should have gotten 9th. And in case some people didn't see it, he was in what would become 9th up until the crash, and then the double yellows get waved, so no one should overtake, and he respects that. But turns out the double yellows were just for a section of the track. Then Behrman and Lewis overtake him, and they instantly say it's virtual safety car. And Hülkenberg was fuming because he lost 2 positions for absolutely no reason, and that was 2 points.
Yeah.
So redemption for him, good to see that. However, Magnussen, they brought him back because Singapore is his best track. And they were like, we need him here. He's going to manage better than anyone. He's one of our best drivers ever here. He holds the fastest lap record for the usual Singapore layout from 2018. It's really funny. He holds the fastest lap there. So there were kind of expectations on him, and he just was nowhere at all. And the star was his teammate.
Yeah, I mean, he came back and he said, I've got a clean slate on my record, so I'm here to fuck shit up. And I guess his definition of fucking shit up is hitting the wall and getting a puncture when he's in 14th. But sorry?
Did he do that?
Magnussen, yeah.
I didn't even see he hit the wall.
He hit the wall at turn 5 and got a puncture 10, 15 laps before the end. He was in 14th. That's why he finished at the back.
Right. I get zoned out by that one. But that makes his weekend even worse then.
In terms of this being one of his stronger circuits, I mean, because he's got the fastest lap here twice, but then I know that 2018, they made him steal fastest lap, I think, but then he got knocked out in Q3 when Grosjean was in Q1 when Grosjean was in Q3 in that one. And yeah, he holds the lap record, but these days lap records are almost meaningless because it's, you just pit at the end and you can take fastest lap because nobody else can challenge you, whereas at least lap records in the days of refueling and everything else, it could happen at almost any point in the race, so it felt more genuine, I suppose. Even though lap records, I hate this rule that it can only be done in the race because cars are always faster in qualifying. So why not just take the fastest lap anyone has ever done? Because it's not like the cars are illegal when they're in qualifying. They could run a qualifying spec in a race, but it would burn its tires out in 3 laps.
I also never got that. It makes no sense. Just use quali. Quali is where you test pace.
I mean, that's the only reason that De La Rosa, after 19 years, still holds the lap record at Bahrain because you can only set it in the race. And I think Barrichello still has it at Monza as well because of that rule from 20 years ago. It's just stupid stuff like that. No, it's like just take it when it's outright fastest, which would be much more representative.
So I just checked the Haas results. So Magnussen was 9th in 2018. Yeah. In the standings.
Oh, in the standings. Yeah. He was 18th in the race. Yeah, because that one they were kind of battling in 2018. They were battling for best of the rest with Force India and Renault, and then Force India became Racing Point and lost half their points, and then Renault. I think they lost out to Renault in the end, but yeah, his results in
they lost out to
Singapore.
Renault.
I mean, he's done 10th, retired, 18th, 17th, 12th, 10th, and then 19th. So, yeah, they're all right, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's kind of contrast because it's kind of contrast because like with Lewis, yes, he did the lap of the century in 2018, but his record at Singapore, this is one of his weaker circuits, and it's one of Mercedes' weaker circuits. Despite that,
but he's only finished in the top 5 there, which is weird because all weekend I was seeing posts about how he's only finished he's only qualified in the top 5 in Singapore, so not finished. He's only qualified in the top 5. So everyone was branding it as one of his best circuits when it isn't really.
The thing is, he's finished in the top 5 in most circuits because of the cars he's had.
Exactly. So qualifying top 5 in Singapore when you were in a Merc for like 10 years. Yes, consistent. He didn't crash in quali, fair enough.
Yeah.
But that's not really indicative of. Also, Singapore is at the end of the season. So, for example, the 2009 McLaren, they will have sorted their shit by that point.
Yeah,
22 Merc sorted their shit by that point. So yeah, the praise was a bit weird. He didn't crash. Fair enough.
I mean, his results Singapore. So 2008, he was third. That was the Crashgate race, of course. Otherwise, he wasn't on to win it. He would have been second behind Massa. I don't know. 2009, he won it when they'd sorted the Merc out. 2010, he crashed into Webber on the safety car restart. 2011, he was fifth. 2012, his gearbox died when he was in the lead. 2013, he was fifth. He won it in 2014. He retired. Car broke down in 2015. He was third in 2016 behind Rosberg and Vettel, I think. 2017, he won it, but that's probably the freest win he's ever got because without that crash at the start, he finishes fifth. 2018, he won it when he did his lap of the century. 2019, he was fourth. 2022, he was ninth, and that was when he hit the wall and managed to keep going. Last year, he was third. Without George's crash, was it just George that crashed? Because then he would have been fourth. Yeah, right at the end. And then
he was chasing behind George.
They were fighting for the win, and then yesterday was sixth. So yeah, it's not in terms of his track. When you consider his performance at places like Hungary and Silverstone, and Canada or whatever, this is one of the weaker ones for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, Haas. I mean, they brought Bear. Some people are saying because of how Behrman performed last week and his Ferrari, maybe just have him in for the rest of the year. Because Magnussen, okay, you can use him as a battering ram, but otherwise, he's not at Hulkenberg's level at all.
Exactly. Well, talking about strong trucks and weak trucks, I guess we can move on to Aston Martin. Alonso has always performed well in Singapore, and I'm not saying it as a joke with Crashgate. He has genuinely been quite good in Singapore throughout the years, and that gets outshone by Crashgate, obviously.
Yeah,
but he does really perform on this track, and yeah, P7 qualifying P7 was a very good result for a car that's really hard to rank at the moment. Some people are calling it 8th, some people are calling it 5th, 6th. It's quite hard to really gauge. One thing is that P7 was a good result, but where would you put it?
Well, when Stroll drives it, it's 8th fastest, and when Alonso drives it, it's 5th fastest. Is how, yeah.
I guess.
But
yeah,
this
well, Lance has been. That's the funny thing. Lance was getting closer to Alonso, or Alonso wasn't performing too well for a few races, whatever you prefer. And I do not know if that has something to do with it, but Newey gets announced, and it looks like Alonso just wants to drive again. And 2 races in a row now just completely blows Stroll out of the water and just completely annihilates him by like 10 positions.
Him and Stroll, they seem to take turns being kind of silent but deadly, and that you never see them in the race, but they just crack on and get points. And now, yeah, Alonso's done the positive. I think that was obviously very reinvigorating, even though he won't feel the effect for another 2 years. That I'm finally getting a Newey car, the man who defeated me all those years ago, and that maybe Stroll is feeling the pressure because he knows he's getting a newie car as well. It's like, well, now I'm going to have to fight for titles with this. But there was a weird interview after Friday where Stroll, he looked like he'd aged about 10 years or he'd been dead for about 12 hours. His complexion had gone and he had these huge bags under his eyes and he just looked dead to the world. And I was like, everyone was like, what is going on there with him? And on top of that, wasn't a good weekend either.
Especially in Singapore, so it wasn't partying that was the reason. It's not really a party hub. So,
So I don't know what that was.
Yeah, suddenly Stroll is struggling a lot with a car that hasn't changed in terms of driving style. Or Alonso is performing. Some things happening there, but Alonso had a very good race. Clean, held off Leclerc for a lot of time. I don't know how much that means in Singapore, but he was defending on a much faster Ferrari for longer, even though Hülkenberg was also able to defend from Perez. So again, not too sure what that meant, but very clean race for him. Good to see 2 more points. He's got 9th, completely secured. Lance, not too sure what happened. Just a bad race. Lance has. I'm thinking of making a compilation on my YouTube channel because that's the easiest thing to do for me. But Lance's interviews recently on YouTube have really gotten popular by just a lot of people realizing how dry they are. Every single interview is like, yeah, the car wasn't performing, we'll see. So you've got all the analysis from like 15 drivers before him. And then it's like, yeah, we'll see. Didn't perform. And after the race, yeah, tough race. That's all he says.
You can tell he just can't stand it. A lot of the media stuff. The big one was
and not in a Kimi or Oscar way.
Yeah, in a way that like I can't be asked. Like we saw that Qatar last year. And they're like, so how was the car today? Shit. What do you think you could do in the race? Keep driving. Like that's his response. It's just yeah.
Yeah, and people have finally picked up on it because I had noticed it, but now a lot of the comments on the post-quali interviews or post-race interviews are like fascinating from Stroll again. My favorite driver with his best insights at 5:36. Oh, look, Lance has yet again delivered a masterclass in punditry. So yeah, he has that going for him. We don't know what's going to happen.
He just doesn't care anymore. Like he just doesn't look interested, and he's always getting fed up. Alonso somehow is loving this, even though the car is useless and all of that. I think he's just happy to be there at this point, and I get excited about the new news. But Stroll, yeah, it looks just more and more that he's being held hostage by his dad, who just wants him there to give him that
Alonso's
title.
really frustrated. Is still really frustrated by the pace, and he is looking forward to the Austin package. But
well, I mean,
Aston Martin.
So that's when their next
Aston
round.
Martin in their packages and their upgrades. I do.
It's when their next round of downgrades are coming. Then
exactly.
In Kota.
It's meant to be a big upgrade package, and it's like.
I mean, nobody has big upgrade packages anymore because the grid is so close together, and the regulations are so restrictive. You can gain maybe a 10th at most. There's so little in it that they're not suddenly going to be the fastest team.
Yeah, I mean, and also big upgrade package. What's the best that can happen? He can outqualify Lewis once or twice. Like
maybe finish 6th in one race. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much. Maybe he will be happy to be fighting Lewis. So yeah, not much going on there.
Heaven help us if it is a big upgrade and suddenly they lock out the front row in Kota and the final 6 races it's just the Aston Martin show. It's like, what the fuck's happening with the championship now?
Do you remember in 2022 when Vettel was third and Lance 22 or 21? I think 22 when Vettel was third and Lance was 5th in Kota for no reason.
Oh yeah. Vettel that was a really good race from him as well near the end. Or wasn't that the one where they completely bollocks it up in the pit lane? It was either 21 or 22.
They qualified like 4th and 6th, and then they were running in 3rd and 5th for like half the race.
I think that might have been 22. Vettel had that awful pit stop, and then he had that last lap battle with Magnussen.
Yes, and Stroll was 5th, and then fell down to 6th or 7th, and that's when he crashes with Alonso, and Alonso goes airborne, and then lands it.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. No, that race was basically Vettel's last good race for him, like just before the end.
And it got completely outshone by this Alonso FIA battle where he was like, I am never racing anymore if you don't give me those
And then it's
4
like the,
points.
and then it's like the next day, Alonso to Aston Martin. Well, actually, he'd already signed for them by that point, hadn't he? That was back in the
Yeah,
summer. He got that, but yeah,
but still, it was him like, if I don't get those 4 points for driving a car that had basically no flaw, I am leaving the sport. And everyone on Twitter were like, "Oh yeah, give him his points, give him his points." Yeah,
I mean, to be
that
fair,
was
he did Baku 2018 on 3 wheels. You know,
yeah,
he
yeah,
will do it.
exactly.
I mean,
But yeah,
he needs like a sympathy championship, maybe. Just give him one for having put in the hard graft for 23 years.
he needs a sympathy win, is what I'm saying. I'm not gonna go as
Yeah.
far as a championship.
It's like when you're given an honorary degree from a university, an honorary doctorate or whatever that you haven't had to do anything for. Just give him an honorary win.
I think he needs an honorary win in Singapore just to make up for like the one that always. Well,
The one
it should be.
because I mean, yeah, looking at
So
it again, you're right. He is actually very good here because his results at
he is
Singapore.
really good there.
Yeah, I mean, 2008 first ish, 2009 third, 2010 he won from
Sorry,
pole.
2009 third in an absolute shitbox. That R29 was
Yeah,
so bad. It's the worst car he's
and,
driven
and
since
fuck ugly. He
2001.
got pole in Hungary and that thing, and then the wheels came off. But yeah,
Yeah,
that was an awful car and fuck ugly. 2010 he won from pole. 2011 he was fourth.
only 2010 is only Grand Slam.
Yeah, and he had Vettel behind in the entire race. 2012, 2010 fourth, 2012 third, 2013 second, 2014 fourth in that Ferrari. 2015 retired in the GP2 engine mobile.
2013, he got second because he started seventh and went up to third by turn one because he took the outside line, and it was like, how have you made up 4 positions in
He,
that
he, he,
one of
he did
the
a, he did a
shortest?
Colapinto, which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah.
2015, yeah, retired. 2016, he was seventh. 2017, well, amazing start and then got taken out. That could have been a top 5 maybe. 2018, he was seventh. 2022, he retired. I don't remember how in that one. Last year, he was 15th. I don't remember that. And then this year, 8th.
Last year he had an issue like that. He just finished the race, but wasn't anywhere.
There was something wrong. I can't really remember now.
But yeah,
But yeah,
basically
so that is
has been a really, really good track for him. And that's why
yeah.
I always say, yes, Crashgate, but he is genuinely good there.
And he at least has one legitimate win there with 2010. He can say that. And yeah, his only Grand Slam. Because that's I think some people are joking that Ricciardo should be given driver of the day because he took Lando's Grand Slam away. Yeah, why not?
Lando would have as many Grand Slams as Alonso, which would be bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about botched upgrade packages, let's move on to Williams, because Williams, everyone has been talking about how close Colapinto has been to Albon this race, and as an Aston Martin follower, I have been begging people to understand that upgrade package doesn't mean upgrade package. It means we want it to be an upgrade package, but it's just a new package.
Well,
Nothing.
I mean, their upgrade package is Colapinto. It's not the car. Yeah.
Firstly, yeah, but secondly, also upgrade packages can not work, as we have seen with Aston Martin time and time again. So nothing can tell us if this upgrade package for Albon is actually much faster than Colapinto. And if it is, either Colapinto is the new Piastri or something, or I don't know, Formula One, because I don't think people realize for Colapinto to have been this close to Albon after an upgrade package would have meant that Colapinto is seriously good, and he is, but I don't think people quite realize how much praise they're giving Colapinto if they're saying what I think they're saying. This would mean that Colapinto is better on pure talent than Albon after 5 years in Formula One.
Okay, well, let's see. Well, Albon, he was against a faltering Kvyat. Then he got completely shat on by Max. And then he's been fluffed for 3 years by Latifi and Sargent. So there's no reason to say that maybe is just a midfielder.
But would you say that he's bad enough for a new, good Formula 2 driver to be 7 thousandths behind him? That's the point where I'm not too sure that
It's hard to
upgrade
say.
package was.
It's other than maybe he's got, as well as his last two teammates making him look good. It's also made him complacent because he had so little competition. Um, these last two races have given me a lot to contemplate and think about when it comes to rookies and the state of the drivers. Because the comments his comments at the start of the race were very interesting because Colapinto gained like 5 positions just by driving in a straight line. And Albon, he was nowhere near Albon. I was like, what the hell is he doing diving like that? Because Albon ran wide, and some of the other drivers thought it was a bit funny. And it's like, you're here to race, you know. And this is one of the vibes I get in that we've seen issues with resistance to admitting new teams and skepticism over taking new drivers, that the sport has become very cliquey and everyone just kind of likes it as it is. There's this current crew because everyone knows each other. They're all very safe with and everything, and they understand them. And this new kid comes in who, you know, drives like a sim racer and is just diving down the inside and putting off moves they didn't expect. He's kind of like a Kobayashi light in that respect. And it's like
Hayashi Knight is an incredible nickname.
Yeah, it's just like, but this is what we need. We need this excitement. But also, we saw what he did. We've seen as well how Behrman has been. Lawson last year, Ricardo is just the beginning in terms of getting rid of all the fossils and bringing in the new guys, even with this crippling lack of seats. Because apparently Sauber, it's a done deal that Bottas is staying again next year, so there's no room for any Bortolettos or Malonis or anything. It's not official, but it's not official.
I thought that Colapinto is getting really close to it again.
Well, it's one of these things where journalists say, "Oh, it's going to be announced next week," and it begs the question: how do you know this already? Again, does every team have a spy that is, or like a fly on the wall in the boardrooms that's seeing these contracts being signed and announcing it before it's official? That's what I'm thinking. But
I really don't think it's true because, for example, Sainz was supposedly going to Alpine, and that completely.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it's just, I mean, it'd be very disappointing if that is the case because we need more rookies. Because Colapinto has been he was okay in Formula 3. I first heard about him when he was in Freca, and he was one of the drivers because they had limited number of drivers that could qualify at Monaco, and he did not make the cut, and he complained massively about that. He was okay in F3, all right in Formula 2, and now he's proving himself to be very good in Formula 1, 100 times better than Sargent. And it does leave you thinking about what this means for Behrman and Antonelli and how the others are going to be. If it's just the overall standard of drivers, there's a lot of very exciting prospects coming in, and if they're ones where their driving styles are different and they can throw drivers off, that makes it even better.
Can you imagine if, without us knowing, Richard Vershaw is actually faster than Ocon at the moment?
I mean, he could be. I mean, he did win. Well, I say he won in Baku. His wins don't count, but somehow he's still just about hanging on after 90 races in Formula 2. They
got pulled in Monaco.
Yeah, again, but then the car, something went wrong, didn't it? I don't know. His career doesn't count. He's too old. But yeah, there are a lot of really exciting guys coming in that we need to try out, and I think maybe the team are just getting a bit. Everyone is just playing things safe because they're obsessing over tires. Make the tires last, run this long stint, then you can just do the undercut. It's never, oh no, just barge past them at the start and just do the hard graft and move your way up. There's no, and then we're seeing comments like Albon's at the start, and we need more of this excitement, and we need some of the people that are unorthodox without being reckless, I suppose.
But especially because, yeah, as you said, Albon was nowhere near Colapinto, and Colapinto, he's fighting for his future, so of course he is going to make this move, and the move stuck. So like, what's the issue with it? So yeah, great job from Colapinto. He was exhausted at the end. I don't know if you saw.
Oh yeah, he would.
He wasn't replying to his engineer because he didn't have the energy to focus and speak at the same time. So for the last 20 laps, he didn't reply once, or like he mumbled, or he groaned to reply instead of actually replying, and then he apologized and was like, sorry, I was too tired, and his engineer was like, sure, that is.
Yeah, I mean,
we understood that was going on.
Well, he's never raced at Singapore before, and the races he has done have never been more than an hour long, so that's all very new for him. But he was going to drop out of the points because Ferrari went out of position, but he went from, after his amazing start, he went from 12th to 11th. He spent a large part of the race with Checo behind him, and Checo was like, oh, he's very good, he's hard to pass, and It's like, yeah, a driver like you, even though you're Checo, you still shouldn't be struggling behind someone in their third fucking race in a Williams as well. So yeah, a star for Colapinto, I think.
Yeah, same A star for Colapinto, and he was frustrated because he thinks he could have kept Perez behind, which is probably true in Singapore, but that is not a reason to not be rating his race as really well. So we'll see, as really good. So we'll see how they perform in Austin, and the two other teams, honestly, Sauber and Alpine, just nowhere. Both of them didn't do anything. Joe beat Bottas this weekend, if that's anything to. Well, he got completely smashed.
Joe, he was only half a second off in qualifying this time, off of Bottas. He passed him at some point quite early on, and was actually braking ahead of him. He passed him on lap 6, and stayed ahead. So he went from 20th to 15th. Okay, fine. Bottas did nothing. He wasn't it him. Oh no. It was Stroll. Stroll nearly didn't start the race. I just remember because they were working on his brakes on the grid, but he got going because I thought it was one of the Saubers because they were right behind him. Alpine, I took basically no notice of them because I was kind of praising them because they started really badly and then they improved so much mid-season and now they're slipping backwards again. And this race, Ocon didn't do anything, and then Gasly pitted 10,000 times and finished 17th or whatever.
Gasly was fuming. Gasly was like, "Why are we doing?" He again was like, "Why are you doing this to me?" Which made sense last year when it felt like he was the reject that they just got in, and Ocon was the main driver. But right now, there's no reason for them to favor Ocon over Gasly. So Gasly still is victimizing himself a lot when like you will be the number one driver next year. There's no reason for them to be willingly just hampering you. So
based on how Colapinto's driving, it does make me wonder what we'll see from Doohan. Because there is an interesting thing. Apparently, they have given the green light to actually do a rookie sprint race in Abu Dhabi.
Really?
Yeah, apparently it's going to get the green light, and so that would be really interesting. They said it was after the race. So I was like, do it on the Saturday. Don't do it after the Grand Prix.
Yeah, do it on the Saturday.
Yeah, so it would be, and they would have their own mini qualifying. I guess maybe their only concern is, well, if they crash it in Bennett, the other drivers has to get his car fixed in time for the race. But it's one.
Yeah, but if they do that, that would be one of the best things they've done in like 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, please, God, if it's Bortoletto and Lawson just destroy Max and Lando's cars, and we're on because I think that in the maths, apparently, according to Crofty, we could end up in a situation where they're tied on points going into Abu Dhabi. If things go, I think it's if Lando wins with Max second each time, that's how it might go.
So, what would it be then? So, Bortoletto, Lawson, Schwartzman.
Yeah, so Schwartzman, Ferrari. Lawson for Red Bull.
Would it be like full rookie? No, but if it's not full rookie, then Behrman.
I think it's just anyone who has. Maybe there's going to be a limit on the number of race starts you can have. Maybe because I know that the FP1
Lawson be eligible.
Maybe he wouldn't actually because
Lawson might be a full-time driver in a bit.
Oh yeah, by then he might be a full. Yeah. Actually, that's the point. No, I think it might be like that. I think we still have that FP1 rule where it's a driver with fewer than 3 race starts has to do an FP1 session, and so they all cram them in at Abu Dhabi at the end. If we assume that Lawson's not a contender, it would be, I guess, Hadjar for Red Bull, Bortoletto for McLaren, Schwartzman for Ferrari, Antonelli for Mercedes, Drogovic for.
Would it be Schwartzman, or do you think they put Schwartzman in Ferrari or Behrman? Because one is going in Haas.
Well, one of them has to go in the Haas, and Behrman's going to be driving. Behrman's going to be driving for Haas next year. So, they need to give Schwartzman something. He's been living off scraps for 5 years now. Antonelli at Mercedes, Drogovic at Aston Martin, Doohan at Alpine. We said Hadjar, so Marti maybe for RB.
Sebastian Buemi.
Or Buemi, he can be their 35-year-old junior.
But actually, who would it be? Would it be like?
Because Marti, it's not going to be Goethe because he's been total dog shit in the two Formula 2 races he's done. The others, they're not going to do it to Lindblad. He's only 17. Tramnitz
the
is not.
return of the Vips.
Yeah, it probably would be Marty. Then
Yeah,
it's
but Marty hasn't even done an FP1 for them. Who else do they have?
Iwasa.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of
it would be
course.
Iwasa. What are the other teams then? I said Williams. That would be
Haas, Alpine Sauber. Oh no, Haas.
Haas would be Behrman. For Williams, it would be, I would say O'Sullivan because he's still technically a junior, even though his money has dried up. But if not him, it would go to Browning. But then Browning's only just started F2, and he's a fossil already.
No, O'Sullivan has done a session for them, so I guess.
I think they would give it to O'Sullivan. And then, yeah, we said Haas. Maloney for Sauber. Is that everyone?
Yeah, I guess that would be it.
Yeah, that's all of them. I mean, that's quite an exciting bunch. There's a mixture because they're not all just F2 drivers. They've all done F2 recently.
It's annoying that Antonelli would qualify because I mean, no, it would be fun, but he's having a full season anyway, so.
Well, no, he is still a rookie, never done F1 race, so yeah. But it would be a very interesting spectacle. Another thing I'd thought about is if they did that, but for all of their F1 Academy drivers. So take one of them and put them in a Formula One car against each other and see how they do. And then, of course, you can compare their lap times to the guys, and we can see how that is. That could be.
Well, imagine if instead of 10 cars, they actually just did a 20 car race, then it would be absolute chaos.
The entire F1 Academy grid, plus Jamie Chadwick. Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah, they would find that would make them find a way to put Chadwick in one of them. So,
but yeah, this idea of sprint races for rookies, I can get behind that. If we just replace the sprint races with sprint races for rookies instead, that sounds fun, and that
and then count the points for the teams.
But that's the thing. They could do it. It could be its own mini championship. They have their own. There's a rookies championship, and they have half a dozen races a year where they get to do a sprint, and they get a little trophy at the end. And yeah, it can be constructors' points.
But also but I'm saying the points could count for the actual constructors.
Yeah. Add it onto that as well.
But then it would be funny because they could just, like in this case, put Behrman in a Haas, who obviously is going to be much faster than some of the other rookies. So
you'd have some of them. Maloney could single-handedly get all of Sauber's constructors' points. Like
exactly.
Yeah, no. It's a good idea, and they should pursue more of that. Did we cover it? We covered every team, didn't we?
Yeah, we covered every team. One last thing I wanted to mention was more and more Bernie's sprinkler idea starts to become more relevant when you see no one crashing and no safety cars.
Yeah,
Bernie Ecclestone's let's just put sprinklers on the track idea just does work in the current state of Formula One. So
it would be
bad it's getting.
Because I think when he did it was like manually controlled. So no, I think do it so it's controlled by some kind of AI or some kind of random number generator, so that nobody knows if it's when or if they're gonna activate, and they just suddenly burst on us out of nowhere. As if it's a case that it's controlled by the race director. That's you could see. Well, that's such a clear-cut example of race fixing. In a lot of cases, but yeah, something like that. And this is my issue again. Generally speaking, the driving standards are very good, but the drivers are too safe because they know each other and understand each other and all of that. And the cars are too easy to drive. And we need more crashers. We need to stop firing everyone that crashes all the time, or at least they need to have lots of oil dictator money like Maldonado or whatever to justify their crashing. Because it's just not, otherwise we end up with races like this. I mean, to be fair, we've been spoiled with a lot of very good races this year. It's just that this one, there were so many high expectations for it, and it just fell flat.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens in Austin. There are fewer upgrade packages happening, so let's see how those go, if they're actually upgrade packages or downgrade packages in the case of Aston Martin. And yeah, well, When's Austin? In 4 weeks or 3
4 weeks? Yeah, we have an autumn break now. Like this is the
Nice. Well,
this is the calendar being held hostage by the Middle East because we had to fit in Qatar and Abu Dhabi in December. We have to have this enormous gap in that we.
well, the good thing for
Yeah.
us is we can have a few historic episodes coming through for the podcast. So finally, a few throwbacks to be had because we've had a lot of races for a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And we need to keep that for the ethos of this. So let's do tops and flops. Tops, well, Colapinto, I suppose, yeah, Lando and Max. I think good shout for me.
I'll go for Colapinto, Max, and Alonso because I struggle to put Lando in there with all his mistakes.
Flops. Who was especially bad in this race? Sauber, Lewis, and Albon for being a whiny bitch. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Albon I was going to say first. Albon was one of the most apologetic people towards him after that AlphaTauri incident with Kvyat. I was like, look, he obviously is quite frustrated, and plus that he shouldn't be saying that, but people forget he was in the middle of his second full season, so that was before where Piastri is right now. I was like, look, he made a comment he shouldn't have made, but again, he was saying this to his engineer. It wasn't a message to the public. If he's making this comment in 2024 about his rookie teammate, then the issue is him, and I cannot be apologetic towards that. Sauber, yeah, absolutely nowhere. Then Alpine were disappointing. They looked like they were back on midfield pace, and it's gone again. So for what's essentially a factory team, well, they are a factory team. They have to get their shit sorted
before they become what Alpacades whenever Darth Briatore's got his plans in order or whatever he's cooking up in the background.
But Alpine Merc is just the 2015 Lotus Merc, so well, and that was bad.
Yeah, with an equally kind of meaningless team principal. Can't even remember his name now. Matthew something was their TP in 2015, and now it's
I had no idea. So that was after Boulier left.
Yeah, after Boulier, they had this guy for like 2 years. I think it was a Matthew, and now and then he disappeared, and now then it was Vasseur, wasn't it? 2016.
Was it?
And maybe he wasn't team principal. He was involved with them in something. Maybe not as TP, but he was high ranking Fred Vasseur. He was with Renault.
Okay, didn't know that.
And then it was a beatable. And then they got rid of him, and then oh my god, who was after a beatable?
The guy with the Polish name 9-letter, Budkowski or something. Yeah.
Who? Never even heard of the guy. And then it was Safnauer, wasn't it? And then they got rid of him, and then it was Famine, and now it's this guy. And there was probably someone else in the middle. Who knows?
Yeah, just random people. So yeah, Alpine, they need to get their stuff sorted. But yeah, nice break, I guess. Good to go into the break with a Lando Max 1-2. Sets things well for the last few weeks. How many races do we have in how many weeks to close it?
6 races, 2 triple headers. So that's 1, 2, 3, 7-week stretch. So 6 races in 7 weekends.
Oh, is it not a 2-week break between the 2 triple headers?
No, there is a 2-week break. That's my point. But there's triple headers. So there's 7 weekends and 6 races. There's a weekend in the middle.
Is it a 1-week break between or 2 weeks?
Oh, it might actually be 2. It might actually be 2. So they've extended it even further. In that case,
okay.
we're going right.
That would be better. 6 and 7 is.
Yeah, we're not done for almost. We're not done for almost 3 months now. Still, yeah, it'll be right before Christmas that this is resolved. Unless Max can take it.
When we grew up watching Formula One, we would have just watched the season finale yesterday.
Yeah, I know that's the thing. Even like 2006, after the summer break, there were 4 races, and we've had 4 races now, and that's it. It's done. And this is the 18th race. This would have been the end of the season, but yeah, we're still going.
18 or 19 for me. A season is 19-20, so 19 or 20 races.
Yeah,
so
I mean to be fair, we are in the position whereby Vegas could get their dream country, and we could see the title decided there theoretically if Max starts to break, if Max could extend his lead any further. Although he'd need to be at least 50 points ahead. But then that being said, Lando is only 1 point closer now than he was after Miami. That's how little progress he's made in the fastest car on the grid.
Exactly. So interesting stuff to look ahead to, and looking forward to the historic episodes.
Yeah, 4 weeks off of no races. In that time, I'll be sending this away for some repairs and servicing. So hopefully, I'll have that back in time to play some Stars and Stripes in COTA. Or Star Spangled Banner is what it is, isn't it? You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to tune in for our next episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.